Good Tuesday morning, everybody. My name is Eric Bjerndorf. I'm the CEO of Evernet Consulting. We are Finance and Technology Insights, and I'm joined by my co-host.
What's happening? Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting. Good to be back after a little bit of vacation, although we were able to record, which is nice. And now we're back, everybody at home base.
How was the trip?
It was very good. So since we recorded last Tuesday, we stayed the rest of the week and then flew back on Saturday. A lot of pool time. The weather in Florida cooled down a little bit, which was nice. And I don't know, went out to eat every night, did the golf cart thing, had a pretty uneventful flight back from Orlando into New Haven. We flew into New Haven on a Velo, which is super easy on and off, and had a friend pick us up and take us home. I was greeted by a tree that fell down and broke a section of our fence, but other than that, not so bad.
Nice.
How was your weekend?
Last weekend was good. I think me and the guys, we pulled off a last minute poker game, which was funny. And then Friday, I passed my last certifications. I think I spoke about it this summer. I was kind of bulking up on some certifications in my industry, and I passed on, I think it was Friday or Thursday. It might have been Thursday. I passed the it's an acronym, CISM, Certified Information Security Manager, which is kind of a mastery level, managerial level certification that aligns with my experience. So that was exciting.
Yeah, that's really good. So that's 2 exams you passed this summer?
So I don't know if I want to make this public. I don't care. I'm an open book. I actually took three exams this summer. I took the CISSP, which I'm an acronym. Let's see, Certified Information Systems Security Professional, which seems to be the penultimate certification, the mastery certification for my field. Like it's like a CIO, Chief Information Officer level certification, highly managerial. So the CISSP I was studying for all summer, and I passed that, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that was exciting. That was a relief. And then I started digging into my certifications that I got 20 years ago when I was a kid, right out of college. Because I went to college, and then I went to a trade school for like 12 for like a year or something, and I got certification. So it's unusual for people in my trade to have a college degree in the subject matter and certifications. It's kind of, you do either or, but I've done both. But anyways, I haven't really logged into it was Microsoft certification. I'm a Microsoft certified systems administrator, which is kind of like a mastery level engineering cert. And that was like, 8 exams or something. And then I have what's called the A+, the Net+. And I took the classes for the Security Plus exam and the Linux Plus exam, but I got a job after I finished the MCSA and the A+ and the Net+. Mm-hmm. So once I got a job, I look back now and I kind of remember, like, I was just kind of looking forward, right? I kind of thought I was starting my career and looking forward, and I never went and finished it. I never got the test for the Security Plus or the Linux Plus. And I guess I've been representing, although I haven't really had to represent my credentials, but I think in my mind, I thought I had the Security Plus and Linux Plus certifications. So as I logged into my accounts, I had to, did I tell you this last week? I logged in.
You would send me a text, and I questioned whether it was you or an employee, and then you went into it a little bit.
Yeah.
But we didn't talk about it on the show.
So the administrative authorities for the certifications are CompTIA, Microsoft, ISC Squared, and ISACA. And the CompTIA one's a pretty popular one, and that's where the Security Plus is administered. That account I hadn't logged into in 20 years. I think as soon as I got the certification, I printed it, I just never logged into it again. Right. And I was trying to get access to the account. I had to resurrect an old Hotmail email address in order to gain access to this account. And I went into my filing system and I found some old documentation pertaining to the certs I had. And I was able to kind of muck together enough information that was on the account that the support at the agency finally gave me access to the account. It was using my father's old landline phone number
Wow.
that has we haven't had literally in 20 years, I think. So it was just funny to see the street address that the account was registered to was like my childhood house growing up in Simsbury, which is funny. So anyways, long story short, once I got into the account, I realized that I didn't have the Security Plus certification or the Net Plus or the Security Plus and the Linux Plus for that matter. So fortunately, the CISSP certification highly what do I say? The standard is really high in that you have to go to a testing center, and the testing center, if you've ever been to one, is like it's like a very high standard when it comes to like checking in. They take your biometric, they take your palm scans, they pictures, and they validate the hell out of you and all this stuff. And you're there for 3 hours taking this exam. You can do that with the Security Plus and them, but they also support what's called remote proctoring. And that was kind of intense. So you can take the test at home, but you have to literally pan your computer around and show them the workspace. And if the workspace does not meet the criteria, they had me remove everything off my desk. They had me remove the garbage can from the room.
Wow.
No watch, no phone, nothing. Like it was pretty intense, but it was kind of a significant convenience. You know what I mean? So I was able to. So I said, you know what? Let me just see if I can just ride through this with my experience on the Security Plus. So I spent the $500 or $600 on the exam for Security Plus, and I took it the next day, and I passed.
Oh,
so
good.
Long story short, I discovered I didn't have the Security Plus. I was kind of representing that I had it, although I don't need to represent my credentials very often, but I got it. I kind of I considered myself backfilling that, which I should have had anyways, which was nice. I got the CISSP, which is that mastery cert, and then the CISM I got on Thursday, which is I think the industry kind of looks at the CISM as kind of a little brother to the CISSP. I think most people want the CISSP, but the CISM speaks for itself too. So.
And so what was the impetus of getting all these at this point in time? I know you're getting ready to start your MBA stuff. Did that factor into it, or just checking boxes?
My entire life I've always struggled with imposter syndrome. And it's not like we're curing cancer with what we're doing, but it's important for me to make sure that I'm a good leader for my staff, and that I can, reasonably and responsibly represent myself as the professional that I've been for so many years. No, but my clients never ask for my credentials ever.
Right.
And
very slim chance they know what any of those mean or stand for anyway.
Exactly. And that's kind of an unfortunate thing in our industry, sort of, because you can get a guy who's been working on cars for the last 20 years and but has been building his own PCs in his basement, and then hang a shingle in a strip mall and start advising people on managing their technology and their computers. And they really don't have the business acumen or experience to really manage and advise a business with higher stakes, like a healthcare provider or a law firm or some other professional services company. So we often are competing against that lower tier resource. And I don't want to hold anybody down, but there's still, I think the stakes are high enough that, the people who we serve deserve. And quite frankly, it's actually the data that the people we serve
Right.
collect. Let's face it, the law firm understands the importance of the data that they're carrying, but they're also they're not technology professionals and IT leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't all, in fact, they quite frequently don't act in the best interest of their clients because of
Right.
their lack of due diligence on vendors like us,
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I mean, again, a lot of words to say that, I talk the talk and I walk the walk. I just want to be able to, do that with a level of pride and integrity.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. Especially if you're leading a team and you're trying to encourage them to further their career and do that sort of stuff. It's not that it's impossible to do that if you don't have those certifications, but it certainly does help.
Yeah.
And
And
then they
once
may come to you with questions, or they may, look for that
yeah.
path.
And once you get into the stream of your career and the services that you deliver, you can actually get a worn path and a little rut, for lack of better words, and you can lose visibility of maybe the broader
Yeah.
vocation or the broader subject matter. I see that a lot. I
Mhm.
think I do really well in not doing that because I'm such a eager technologist. I just love technology. I love business. And I love
Yeah.
where those two meet. So I stay pretty abreast. So a lot of these certifications that I was taking, um, you know, they were intense, but,
Mhm.
I only studied for one of them for 2 months. And then the other two, I basically didn't study for. And I was able to ride on my experience
Yeah.
to do that. So I jumped the track. I forgot what my point was, but
Well, before we put a pin in it, I'll ask you two quick questions, two easy ones. So what was the biggest thing you learned maybe technically that helps you when you're kind of in your weeds with clients? And then the second question would be, what's kind of the broader thing that you learned that'll help you more from a business sense?
yeah, so there wasn't a lot of learning.
Hmm.
That's the thing. I kind of possessed the body of knowledge that these tests encompassed.
Yeah.
Um, I guess what I learned was, um, it's not even that I learned the new vocabulary, but
Mhm.
I learned that there there is a specific vocabulary that is being promoted at the CIO level, uh, so to speak. So, using terms like security controls, like that is like that is the de facto term when describing a lock on a data center,
Mhm.
or antivirus or something like that. Like they just refer to these things as security controls, and it's a term that just kept coming up and up and up. So I didn't really learn anything new, but it was a kind of an alignment of vocabulary, I think,
Mm.
which is learning.
Yeah.
That is a benefit.
Got to learn what all the newfangled stuff the kids are talking about, right?
Yeah. So,
I want to
anyways, that's what was going on with me. What's new? You jump into the news, or you?
Well, I want to just to share something that I think is kind of funny, and it might be sort of an issue in your business as well. But this is something I've pulled up from FINRA, which is the financial industry. Gosh, I forget what it means already. But um, so these are the list of all the designations that are available. There's
Yeah. So the CISM
maybe.
was in there. You see that?
Oh, was it?
I think it was,
Uh,
or maybe
so let me scroll. I don't know if it's
do Control
alphabetically
F and
by.
do a Control F, and
Uh,
I thought I saw it in there. Maybe not.
but it's kind of funny that there's almost 240 different designations in financial services, which is kind of funny because a lot of these really don't mean much of anything. They're just simply, you're going on and buying some letters or buying a certification that doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. There's some of them that obviously do
I
mean
mean,
something, but
I don't want to. I don't want to poo-poo a certification. I guess it's self-serving for me to say that now under what we just discussed. But they do represent a body of knowledge,
Hmm.
and if you have an organization who is looking for, security auditors or financial auditors or some, some specific realm, um, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to have that certification to say, okay,
Yes.
that represents you possess that body of knowledge. 200 is pretty, is a lot. That's a
Yeah, there's probably maybe 20 to 25, I think, on here that are really. I really like the niche stuff. I think that stuff adds a lot of value. Like there's a few that are, certified divorce advisor. That stuff adds real value if you're going through that situation and you can see that somebody has those certifications. I think that stuff
I mean,
matters.
you know, there's, it can be tough when you have a generalist trying, some people want to hire generalists, and some people, don't want to hire so it's like, it's, I don't say there's nothing worse than, but for lack of better words, there's nothing worse than a generalist representing that they can handle your divorce when, like, maybe they've done, like, a dozen in 20 years rather
Yeah.
than a divorce attorney who has a dozen active
Yeah.
divorces. You know what I mean?
Right.
And some people are okay with that generalist saying, like, hey, generalists can get me through this.
Right.
And sometimes you don't want the generalist. So
Yeah, and a good generalist will have a significant Rolodex of people that they can pull in to help in those situations. And
hopefully,
a generalist might be helping you on two or three different things, so that's why that's a good starting point. And then they can add value by bringing in other professionals. That's
tell me, tell me this, in your trade, do you have, so in our trade, we have a lot of certifications that are vendor specific.
mm,
Do you have any certifications or
yeah.
designations that are vendor? And when I say vendor,
I
whether
Yeah, that's a
what
good
the vendors
question. I would say no because it's hopefully you're not that tied to products. What you will have is vendors that sell a product or a service and also have a certification, which I think is maybe a little bit different than what you're talking about. So there's a company called FI 360 that has some fiduciary stuff that's based around retirement plan reporting, and they also have a couple of certifications. They have the AIF, which is the accredited, I think it's accredited institutional fiduciary or something like that. So they have that, but it's not necessarily they're not certifying you to use their products. It's just
Mm,
kind of just kind of leveraging their content or their contact database to sell this fiduciary standard. So
mm.
I think that's probably a little bit different, but it's
Yeah, I
out there.
mean, we have a number of uh, many vendors, in fact, have certification tracks that surround their products,
Hmm.
which is it's interesting for, like, companies like Cisco, which for many years, all through the 90s, basically, they literally ran the internet.
Hmm.
Everything was interconnected with Cisco. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there's a lot of competition in the market now. Um, but for major networking equipment. Um, but sorry, I'm just it's
No, I would just, I think that's interesting from a perspective of if you're a client or a potential client and 100% what you want as a solution. So if you're part of a larger organization and you want this product to implement from a technology standpoint, you could go out and seek professionals that have that designation in that specific product or service that you're looking for.
mm,
Whereas if you don't know what you want, um, not to say that professional who had that designation wouldn't be good, but then you could go the other way and say, well, is this professional trying to sell me this product because they're certified in it and that's what they know, and it might not be
right.
the best
No,
solution.
in our case, yeah, in our case, like, if you were to be a CCNA, which would be a Cisco Certified Network Administrator,
Mhm.
CCNA, Cisco Certified Network Engineer, in the 90s and the early 2000s, you would have, you'd be like a walk-on to work for Verizon, Comcast, Charter, that sort of thing, because they would need that specific skill set,
Right.
because they had that installed base. That's kind of the context of that.
And now you see a lot of like the Microsoft Azure. I think they probably have some designation, and
Yep,
AWS has like their AWS. I had a buddy
exactly.
taking that certification. So
Yeah,
there's
and to employers, that that again, that's important. If they have infrastructure that uses those vendors, they want the resources who have that vendor
yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah.
What's going on in the markets? Anything you want to report that's interesting?
Yeah, the interesting stuff has been happening on the bond side. We've talked a little bit about and so the bond yields and bond interest rates, when you look at like the 10-year interest rate, so loaning money to the government for 10 years basically is what you're doing there. That interest rate has really soared over the last year or so. And that's what's mostly tied to the mortgage rates. So we've got mortgage rates that are, from an all-time perspective, not ridiculous, but certainly over the last couple decades, we're sort of at that high point now. We're kind of pushing that 7-8% interest rate on mortgages. So that's created a little bit of friction in the mortgage marketplace. Housing's a huge industry, and people moving and doing upgrades and all that sort of stuff is a huge part of the economy. So to not have that kind of housing in motion, I think is something different that we haven't had to deal with for a long time. So the interest rate factor, it's been great for people who are saving. You can get that 1-year CD, you can get that 1-year treasury bond. You're getting 5.5%. That's nice because you never had that in a while. But for August on the stock market side, it's been a little lackluster, down a little bit. Still up for the year and up significantly, but August is kind of a dead month.
Is August
September,
is August often a down month or just a flat month? I mean, I
it's
saw Tesla was trading
usually
down.
usually there's not much going on. So volume is very thin because everybody's, every Wall Street's out at the Hamptons, right? So there's not a lot of volume during August. So when there is some sort of a crisis, like we had there was a China crisis, I want to say in 2016 or 17, and that was middle of August, and it created all sorts of problems in the market. And part of it was just there wasn't a bunch of volume. So when there's huge sell-offs, there isn't as many buyers and sellers to make a market. So usually August is really not much happening. Historically, September and October have been down months. But you can't really trade on that kind of stuff.
What do you know about what BRICS is trying to do with creating their own currency? Have you seen any of those headlines?
Yeah, I followed that a little bit. It's really tough to separate the facts from sort of the extremism and the alarmism and that kind of stuff. It's something I'd have to get into a little bit farther, but listen, none of these countries want to be dependent on the dollar all the time. And when you look at treasury issuance, meaning just basically the money that the U.S. government has to borrow, they've got to borrow a lot of money, and there's a lot of issuance coming up. And when they issue those bonds to borrow money, they need buyers on the other side. And the buyers have historically been there, but they may not be there forever. So it is something that we need to think about. We have this idea that we can continue to borrow and borrow and borrow, but at some point, who are we borrowing from? Eventually they say, you know what, enough is enough. We don't want to be tied to the dollar. We don't want to have our reserves in the dollar. We don't want to have our currency pegged to the dollar, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely something to follow.
Yeah, there's a really great book that I read years ago called, of course, I'm going to butcher it, How Economy is Made and How It Runs, or something, by Peter Schiff, back when the libertarians were making a big push in the 2012 election race. And it's like, it's almost a picture book, and it was just describing how the U.S. kind of controls the dollar, and how the United States economy and the way that the Fed manages the currency, the U.S. dollar, just kept, they keep hollowing it out, and then they keep selling it to China and the foreign markets, and somehow they're under this delusion that like it's the dollar, so it's just good for them forever. But the thesis of the book was that like eventually you'll have a paper mache figure of what the dollar looks like, but there's no dollar in there anymore,
right?
And when that happens, I don't know what his prediction was, but it's, changes to the global economy, are going to occur. So when I saw the headline that BRICS was getting together to potentially charter their own currency, it was kind of like, well, that he called that one. Now, just for the viewers out there, what BRICS is: BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I think it used to be BRIC, but now it's BRICS because South Africa just joined recently within the recent years to that coalition. Now, do you think, and I don't want to call you on it or put you on the spot if you're not too
No, that's
privy
fine.
to it, but does the headline infer that or suggest that they will actually mint a shared currency across their economies? That would be the primary currency for domestic use?
I think they could get to that point. I mean, there's a progression that they would have to go through, or they'd have to kind of tie all their currencies together, and very similar to like what the euro went through and that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's certainly, this is, when we talk about this stuff, it's not like 10 or 15-year economic cycles. It's more like super cycle stuff, like 500-year cycles, which we know every great civilization comes to an end at some point, and there's it doesn't last forever. So it's just the question is, does it happen? Are we at the end of that super cycle, or does it go another 200 years? Or, does the story of them?
And how consequential is it really for a company to control their own currency? Is that because they can just continue to borrow from themselves, inflating their own currency, and the government can just continue to drive the agendas that the ruling elite want? Is that really the only impetus to do that?
Yeah, and I wouldn't underestimate ego and that kind of stuff too. I mean, we don't think about that because we're in the US, and it always kind of feels like we're in the dominant position. But, if you're in one of these other countries and you turn on the news and you see your currency's down against the dollar, it's like, why are we always getting compared to, the big brother type of thing? So, so I think that also plays a role in it. And these countries do have currency reserves, even though a lot of them are obviously in significant debt. They do have some reserves, and they are buying U.S. treasuries. And at some point, if they feel like those are going to be worthless, or if they think there's a chance that the U.S. defaults or doesn't pay something back, which other countries have gone through, if other countries have defaulted on debt. So if they just look at it from a financial standpoint, they say, you know what, U.S. is nuts. We don't think they're going to pay us back in 30 years. Well, that's a legitimate concern.
I mean, to tie into that point, what agency just downgraded? Did the U.S. just got downgraded from?
Yeah, that was Fitch. Fitch downgraded us. So they're the lesser of the agencies. So they're kind of people just kind of dismissed that. But
is that a bellwether? Is it a canary in the coal mine?
It could be. It really didn't affect the markets at all. It really didn't affect treasuries and stuff.
What is Big Short's? What's his name say?
Oh yeah. Well, so that was interesting. He got a bunch of headlines last week because
what's his name? Michael.
Barry.
Barry.
But
the Big Short's Michael Barry. God.
Yeah. He. So there was a bunch of headlines last week saying that he was shorting the U.S. market, and it had big dollar amounts tied to it. But all that came back from his regulatory filing that said he had a certain amount of option positions, and those option positions they extrapolated back to get this dollar amount. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he took this amount of money and then shorted the market, and this is his potential loss or whatever. We don't know the specifics of those option contracts. So basically the financial reporting was looking at his option contracts and saying, this is the maximum amount of exposure those option contracts should have had. So then they get the headline of, he bets big against the U.S. market or whatever, but we don't know what else he was holding, if that was an option bet that ends next Friday or an option bet that ends in a year. Because you don't have to report the specifics of your option trades on your regulatory filings for people like him. So that was get some headlines. So
little housekeeping. We're halfway through the show. If you haven't already, subscribed to the show and hit the bell so you're notified of our next show. I've had a couple of friends ask me recently when they heard that I was on a podcast how to find us. So if you, to any of my friends or colleagues out there, if you're watching, give a subscribe. Brian and I have been doing this now for, I think we're coming up on a year and a half or two.
Yeah, at least I think we started in December of 21.
21. Right? Yeah. Wow. Look at us. We're kind of OG podcasters, or
we really are.
Mid-career podcasters, or however you want to describe it. Or maybe that's a little ambitious. So
the number of podcasts that make it this long is not that many.
Right. So give us a subscribe. We don't get any chatter in the comments. If you want to troll us in the comments, we would welcome that at this point. We are on your favorite podcast platform. Brian is so kind to upload our YouTube recording to the popular podcast. So we're on the podcast, we're on YouTube, we're Finance and Technology Insights with Brian and Eric. We also do have a Facebook page that we pin news articles from time to time. I thought I had 2 pinned there, just kind of transitioning us to the tech news, and I only see 1. So I don't know what else I was recording, but I don't know if you have it up and want to share, or
I don't. I was just going to share quickly this headline since we just got into it, but this is the type of headline you saw last week, or this 3 days ago. Trader who predicted the 2008 financial crisis bets 1.6 billion on stock market crash by the end of 2023. So he didn't necessarily put
the big shirt, Michael Berry.
Yeah. So he didn't necessarily bet that of his own money or any of that kind of stuff. He's using option contracts to get potentially that type of exposure, but again, that's a little too technical to put in a headline, so they just go with that headline. So
right. Pull up while you're on the share, pull up our Facebook page if you're able.
Yeah, hold on here.
Should we hit the pause now that StreamYard supports pause?
Oh yeah, let's talk about that real quick. That was a feature we've been looking for, is this pause button. So you see in the top right now, we have the end recording, the pause, the delete. I guess we can restart, which is nice.
But it is nice. So what Brian's talking about, we use a platform called StreamYard.com to record these shows. It's a really nice, easy to use, web-based platform. And they've been rolling out great features like the local upload, has been a great addition. So you have, you can maintain quality when maybe the internet bandwidth on one side of the conversation is not so good. I've been howling at them to add a pause and restart record feature in there. They call it the studio. We can see the multiple screens and all the assets and things, because sometimes you just need to pause your recording and regroup or do something. And before, you couldn't do that, so you would have to have this long, your interruption in your recording, and then have to edit it out in post. You have to take the file and bring it out. Although they did say in that advert that they have an editor, which I forgot that they have, I guess, a clipper and a light editor. I wish they would really spend some money on making a really robust editing platform so that multiple people can be editing. But anyways, we just logged in today, StreamYard, and they finally added the pause, restart, really nice, and delete in the recording studio. So now we can pause our live recording, which is great.
So here's what we were talking about. As far as our Facebook page, this is something Eric posted on SSO giveth and taketh away.
Yeah. So that's a term I often say to troll people who, I am such a promoter of web and cloud infrastructure for business. And one of the things that I've been championing lately is single sign-on, or SSO. It has a lot of benefits. It's basically one identity that all of your web apps that you use to run your business can use to sign you in, so you just can move freely around the apps that you use. We use dozens of apps to run our business, and they're all web-based. But it is a single point of failure. So if the SSO goes down, then your access to all of your apps goes down. And Duo is a major player in the SSO multi-factor authentication I guess they call it the identity provider service. IDP is
Mm.
the technology that's used to manage single sign-on. So they had an outage yesterday, and I didn't do a deep dive, but an outage is an outage, and I think it came online later that day. So, and that's often the experience now with web-based outages, but it still stings. I mean, SSO is the keys to your apps. So if your keys are not functioning, then you cannot use your apps. And it's just like when Microsoft Office 365 has outages and you can't get email for a day, or you can't access your SharePoint files for a day, it's pretty impactful to the business. So I always use the term when the internet giveth and taketh away.
Right. Yeah. And outages, obviously, you'd probably rather have an outage than some sort of major hack. So if they detected something and quickly shut it down to prevent something, maybe they could spin it as a positive there, right?
Well, I don't. Yeah, and you don't always know if the outage is a result of a security
Yeah,
incident.
that too.
And this article, I don't think reported the details of that.
Mm.
Hopefully Cisco and Duo will do a postmortem and let everybody know what's going on. Fortunately, we don't use the product or recommend it to our clients for no other reason that there's just other products in the space that are more.
Yeah. Who are the leaders there? I know I
Um,
use Semantic VIP for one of the apps that I use, but that's comes down from them. It's not something necessarily I could pick.
the biggest player, to be honest with you, happens to be this company called Okta,
Okay.
OKTA. And they're kind of Microsoft and Google agnostic. It's its
Mm.
own, just as Duo is. And for whatever reason, I don't know the history or the genesis of why Okta. Maybe they were first to market with it. I mean, it is a standard. It is a standard, and Microsoft has been known to lag behind standards and new technologies, or just flat out refuse to participate in them. Apple does it; they all do it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So when I can only speculate that when SSO was coming up in the 20 teens, maybe Okta was kind of the first to market. So when that was kind of bleeding edge and being deployed, they just benefited from a large install base, and as a result, a lot of web apps natively support Okta, and then you have to invoke a custom configuration of the standard if you use a different vendor, if that makes sense.
Mm.
It's kind of like
Right.
a technical qualifier there. But
Yeah.
and I think Okta had a security breach, I think last year. So they're not impervious to, failures and impacts. So
Mhm.
anyways, I thought that was newsworthy.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think you said last week you prefer the use of authentication apps versus texting a code.
Well, it's not even that I prefer it. It's well documented that when it comes to tiers of security or
Mhm.
risk tolerance, the community just views SMS as your second factor to be less secure than an authenticator app or a smart card or smart key.
Okay.
And that's because a number of years ago, a few high profile hacks of journalists' cell phones and SIM cards
Mm.
were publicized. There was a number of journalists who covered their life being hacked and destroyed in real time as a result of a hacker social engineering attack, calling T-Mobile a call center and convincing the human on the phone with enough validating information that the hacker was the owner of the account, and you can over the phone just transfer your SIM card or your SIM to another phone. And
Mhm.
once you have that, and then of course you can use any not black or dark web resource to download a trove of harvested passwords from various hacks. And if you're one of the everyone who reuses passwords, it's just a matter of that is the attack for vector for that.
Got it. Okay. What else was on your list of things to discuss?
What else? I've been invited to Channel 8, I think tomorrow
Oh,
to
good.
to discuss. I don't know if I mentioned it last week or not, but Channel 8 has just invited me to discuss the New Haven, Connecticut Board of Education $6 million hack that happened, I think, last week or two.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week. Has there been any updates on that? Do you know if they were able to recover any more of the money?
The news cycle seems to peter out about it, and I don't go to the length of calling the victims, and I'm not going to call the CIO at the BOE and try to see what happened or whatever. I don't know if anybody's going to do an FOI on it, freedom of information on it or whatever. So I'm just going by what's publicly reported. Again, I think they even made it clear that it was a business email compromise, what they call a BEC hack. And I kind of threw some heavy shade at the organization for likely, and if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected, but they likely did not have company-wide or global MFA, multi-factor authentication, enabled. They probably didn't have, I spoke about this email forwarding feature in Microsoft 365. It has really minimal value to 99% of users, but it's a significant tool that hackers use to compromise email accounts so that they can do further damage and insert. And what they often do is they compromise an email account, create these forward rules of you're sending an email. They route in and out emails from your mailbox to another mailbox, so then they can observe your communications. And then if you have a high stakes or financial transaction that you're conducting through email, they slip in to that conversation in various clever ways to then get you to reroute, changing account numbers or routing numbers and stuff to,
those rules can be pretty powerful for both good and bad. I mean, you can even have, certain keywords, if it finds the word password or reset, it automatically forwards that email and keeps a copy of it in that person's inbox, or you could have it delete it in the person's inbox. So you could set up an account for somebody and use that email address and have it forwarded, deleted, and that person would never know. So you do have to be careful on those rules.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's weird about it is the activity of the rules are kind of not in the visibility of the user who owns the rules. There's no visual cue that a rule was just fired and then a message was routed. It's really kind of by now Microsoft needs to do better, in my opinion, in that regard. They just started releasing some admin tools that email administrators can start disabling that functionality at the server level. But I mean, I think they just released that this year, maybe last year. They need to do better, like maybe having a visual cue that says like a message rule just fired and some plain speak as to what it's doing, so that it prompts somebody to go like, well, that's not, maybe even a security warning that pop up that says, if you didn't configure this, contact your email administrator or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Or even once a week, here are all the rules you set up. Please confirm these to continue, or something like that.
Something.
Yeah. Potentially some good ideas there. So I don't
know. The news is kind of weird if they're, I just saw the reporter. I texted him this morning, say, hey, you want me to come down tomorrow to discuss it? He just said it's, I think he still thinks it's newsworthy and he wants me to come down. So whether it makes it to the news or, whether they publish it or not. That'll be great.
So you're going down there in person. You're not doing a remote thing.
Yeah. They want me to come into the studio. So
good.
I gotta throw a suit on and dress like a grown up.
All right. Don't forget to plug the podcast. All right. So I just had some notes, and I think this might be fun because you have no idea really what any of these notes mean, but I have some notes here. I have cards, stealing, ETFs, and then I have back to the basics. Those are my 4 notes that I just kind of scribbled down before the show. Any of those interest you at all?
Say that again, back to the basics.
And back to the basics, ETFs, which is exchange traded funds, stealing, and the 4th option is cards.
Cards. I want cards and I want back to the basics.
Okay. So cards is relates to the sports card hobby, which has been very fierce over the last really
5 years.
So So big picture, the company called Fanatics, which produces, which runs the back end of all of the major sports leagues, all of the stuff you order. So if you go on MLB.com and you want to order a Yankees shirt, it's going to come from Fanatics. They're either selling it. They even produce their own stuff now. So they're actually making some of the t-shirts and selling those alongside Nike and stuff like that. They bought the Topps chewing gum company, Topps trading card company.
Oh, they bought Topps?
Yeah. So they bought
Wow.
Topps a couple years ago now. And even that was a pretty ferocious business deal, because what happened was Topps at that point only still had licensing for baseball. They had lost football, basketball, and hockey.
Oh, wow.
And so I think Fanatics tried to buy Topps. Topps said no. So then Fanatics said, fine, we'll just bid on the MLB package ourselves to produce MLB cards, which would effectively put Topps out of business because they had nothing except maybe like Garbage Pail Kids or something. So then, so Fanatics just put out like a ridiculously high bid. It was like 10 times what Topps put up. So MLB took the Fanatics bid, making Topps basically worthless. So then Fanatics went and bought Topps.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a crazy story unto itself.
I know. And so now fast forward a little bit. So the football and basketball licenses were both owned by a company called Panini, who's been around forever. They used to just make stickers and stuff, and now they kind of got into the card game and stuff. And now those two have been battling back and forth because Panini sees Fanatics as a massive threat. And so Fanatics, let me make sure I get this right. Panini sued Fanatics for being monopolistic.
Sure.
And then Panini countersued and said, then Fanatics countersued and said Panini is just not creating a good enough product. That's why everybody is jumping to us for the licenses, because Panini, and then they outlined a bunch of things that Panini was doing bad, some quality control issues. And so now those two are going back and forth. And then late last night or yesterday afternoon, I guess, the NFL Players Association canceled their contract with Panini and said they're going with Fanatics, and there was 3 years left on that contract. So it's kind of up in the air, I guess, at this point as to, are there going to be football cards this year? Now, remember, there's two separate licensing issues, which makes this even weirder. Is you have the Players Association, which allows you to produce cards with the player's name, image, and likeness. But then you also need the league to be able to use the NFL logo or the logos of the team.
It'd be funny to have a lot of NFL players in generic
well, it's funny you should say that, because that's actually happened in the baseball card world. There's a company called Leaf that's been producing cards with just the players only license.
Oh,
so
no
there's
kidding.
no team logos on the cards, and they're always in positions where you don't see the front of their helmet. I know, it's the weirdest thing. I've never had any interest in those. Some people buy them, but I don't. And then their uniforms, like, it's always either cropped to where it doesn't show, because you can't even show Yankees across.
And they get away with the color, even like they can see the pinstripes or the coloring, and that's
so
fair
weird.
use.
So that's the question now: is one organization going to produce cards that are just from the Players Association that just has the generic stuff, and then so. Anyway,
what's interesting is the NFL Players Association, if they go away from Panini, if there's a coalescence around a single brand, that may be temporarily, here's the libertarian coming out, it's maybe temporarily beneficial for the short-term contract. But if you and maybe some of your cohorts are a contributor to the demise or the total consolidation or the monopolization of a space, that just means when there's no options down the road, then that fee is not going to be likely favorable for you.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that's and if it turns people away from the hobby or creates just a product that's not any good, then you have all sorts of issues there. So I apologize to the podcast listeners, but people who watching, I'm just showing an image here. This is from a Leaf card where they don't have. Yeah, so there's no logo on the helmet. It's Mike Trout. I mean, it is a cool looking card, but see the way his arm would cover up normally where it would say Angels across. So that's and over here it just says Los Angeles. There's no mention of angels or anything like that. So
Right, but they also have to be careful about like not showcasing branding on shoes and cleats and gloves, right? I mean, because there's
yeah, well,
less.
that's weird. You can pretty much, I mean, you can see at least, geez, there's at least 4 Nike logos on here. So I guess that's not an issue.
Hmm.
But
There's got to be a
anyway,
certain amount of fair use, I guess, right?
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Or maybe Nike's like, yeah, put our logos on that.
Right.
We pay big money to be on the MLB uniforms. But
True. True.
anyway, so that's kind of a hot like business story, I think, which is kind of interesting because it has a lot of
I love that
things
stuff. I
coming,
that what do they call that? What kind of business is that? The
like a
hostile
hostile takeovers and like all that kind of backroom
arbitrage
stuff.
and back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so personally, the way I look at it is so Fanatics bought Topps, so they bought all that intellectual property that comes with it. So there hasn't been Topps football or basketball cards for a long time now. So they could resurrect those brands, and they do a lot of throwback stuff where they do like current players and old designs. So that is kind of nice. But I just hate to see one company dominate like a whole
Yeah. Of
industry like that.
course.
And
Of course.
um,
Innovation slows down.
it does.
Yeah.
And they're even doing like some weird things where they're so this segment's probably way too long, but so there's these people online that are called breakers, and what they'll do is they'll actually buy boxes or cases of cards and they open them online, and they'll sell specific cards or specific teams or whatever. And usually those are regular card shops, brick and mortar shops, and then they just have a spot in the back where they'll do these breaks or whatever. And they've become a pretty decent sized business. But now Fanatics is getting into the breaking business, and they're like, well, part of this is like the chance of what cards you're going to get. And doesn't that like not smell right? If you're producing the cards in your own factory and then you're going down the road and you're opening them up and saying, wow, look at all these great cards. So now, of course, there's all these conspiracy theories that Fanatics is sending the better cards, like the rare hits, they call them, to like the breakers,
Oh,
so that
the
they'll
high.
show them on YouTube and everybody
Mhm.
be like, wow, that's such a cool card, even though they have no chance of getting those cards because they're all going to the breakers. And now
Right.
even Fanatics could be opening them themselves. So
Yeah.
uh,
Dicey world of card trading.
I know.
The story's interesting though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's got a business and a little bit of a technology angle into it too with some of the stuff that they do. But
You want one
um,
more? Or you want to wrap?
well, we could talk about this quick, but it's not anything like kind of earth shattering. But there's been a couple instances over the last week or so where done something that would and answered questions for people that you would think are really basic. And I know you probably get this in your world too. We always want to talk about these complex things and like all this kind of stuff, but it's always a good reminder of just like getting back to the basics when you're in front of a group like of employees or something. It's really easy to go off the rail and talk about something like way more exciting than what is an IRA, what is a 401k, what is an ETF, what is a mutual fund. All that stuff is so important. And we think sometimes that people, because they're in a certain position or of a certain age or from a certain, economic whatever, that they know that these basics, but it's
Literally
good to
today,
kind of,
you used the term treasury, and I wanted to ask you without embarrassing myself. It does.
yeah, I know
Is it U.S. Treasury just a dollar bill?
it's a bond. So it's a bond where you can go, you buy them directly from the treasury, or you can buy them what's considered like a secondary market through like a Schwab or a TD account. And then there's two ways to make money on those. So you can buy them for 100. Let's say they're at a 5% interest rate. So you buy it for 100. A year later, you get your $100 back plus the $5 of interest. The other way is you can buy them at a discount where you buy them for $95, and then a year later they give you $100 back. So the ones that don't pay any interest are called zero coupon bonds, and they're priced at, those are kind of like the old ones like your grandmother used to get, like they'd go into the bank and they'd buy a bond for $25, and then they'd say, here's a bond for $25. When you're 20, this will be worth $100. That's what those were.
What dictates the maturity on that one?
So you can on the
Contract on the bond?
yeah, there's a maturity date. So the farthest out you can buy on a treasury bond is 30 years. So you can go and say, I want to loan money to the government for 30 years. Now you're not really locked in because you could always sell that the next day.
In a secondary market?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
you could always sell those. Most times people buy those and hold them to maturity, but yeah, I mean, that's just, it's a good reminder for me. Like I was having a conversation with somebody and we went into all these like asset allocation things because the first couple questions he asked, it's almost like he must have got them from somewhere. Like he read some Forbes article or something on LinkedIn. So he started off and he asked a couple really good questions. And then his third question was still a good question, but it was really, really basic. And I'm thinking, if I have to answer this third question, he didn't understand the answer to my first two questions. So it's like and you see that all the time. It's like 5 questions to ask your financial advisor or 3 questions you need to ask
It's a very
your,
SEO worthy
technology advisor
headline.
today. And then they ask these questions, but they have no idea on how to interpret the answers or what the next question might be. But and then even, this week I was talking to a small business owner, really smart person, really, all this kind of stuff, but explaining the basics of putting together her retirement plan for her employees. And again, I know it can be kind of technical and she knows a million things about, her world that I don't, but, I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there because
Yeah, I like that.
I like once a week there's these things. It's like, all right, I gotta just, and from a content perspective too. I mean, everybody wants to talk about like this in-depth thing that nobody knows about. It's like just figuring out different ways to say the same basic concept, I think has as much
Well,
value
I mean,
as.
listen, you're a professional service. I'm a professional service. Our challenge to engage new clients and, quite frankly, existing clients is an educational challenge.
Mhm.
And how many times do you have to hear something, do they say, before you learn it? 7,
Right. Yeah.
10,
7, 8. Yeah.
So if you have like 5 basic points or 10 basic points, and you just put out a new video every week, every quarter, you might start at the beginning again. And quite frankly, the algorithm will enjoy that because the eyeballs only care about what's kind of new. It's that historical content, from a digital marketing standpoint, is, it's all about the new,
Mhm.
even if it's the same.
Right. Just new ways of saying the same thing and just to listen to the way your customers and clients ask questions, the terminology that they use and the way they interpret it. Whether you're in person or on Zoom, you can see their face. You can see them go, oh, okay, yeah, now I get it. Okay, yeah, now I get it.
Yeah.
And then you want to oh, how did I just say that? What phrase did I use that helped them understand it? And then maybe that's the new piece of content. But
I think you're in the same boat as I am.
mhm.
It's like our subject matters are just so, they're so, kind of not technical, but they're so, specific in their own right. That this SMEs, the subject matter experts, are of course the ones who love and operate in that space, but like everybody else outside the space is just like begrudgingly bumping against these things, cybersecurity, investments, things like that. I just want to be a lawyer, or I just want to be an accountant, or I just want to be a dentist. Like, I got to set up all these things. And it's pretty, it's pretty interesting.
Yep, it absolutely is. Well, I think that's probably a good spot to end. So I'm Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting, Connecticut-based investment advisory firm, helping small businesses and families on their wealth management and planning issues.
I'm Eric Bjorndorf, CEO of Evernet Consulting. We're a national IT services provider. We mainly help professional services businesses, doctors, lawyers, healthcare facilities, but we do some manufacturing, and we will support any type of business if we're called on. If you want to meet with me to discuss your IT needs, you can go to evernetco.com and find the schedule a discovery call button, when you can find us on any social at evernetco.
All right, sounds good. And we're looking for you tomorrow on News Channel 8.
Well, I'm in the studio
In the
tomorrow.
studio.
I don't know
Okay.
how long it's going to be, if it's going to be a long produced thing. So I don't know if it's going to come out on Sunday or if it's going to be nightly news or something. And it may not even publish. I don't know if I bomb or whatever. So
My prediction is it's a 5-part docuseries, 60 to 90 minutes. I think that's really the only way to break this down.
Right. I
Yeah.
hope not. So,
All
all right, we'll
right.
see you next